You know, if I think there's one meme on the internet that shows you how someone's trying to be annoyingly edgy, it's the whole X did nothing wrong meme. I can't really talk about the origins of the meme this soon into the video because then we'd get stuck with the infamous yellow dollar sign. All I can say is that you'll oftentimes find some edgy goofball saying insert villain here did nothing wrong to either make the hottest of hot takes or to be an annoyingly edgy dork on the internet. We've seen a myriad of them before, like Riddler did nothing wrong with the Batman, Joker did nothing wrong with the Dark Knight, Walter White, Makima, Big Boss, Your Mom, and the list goes on. However, I think the two that probably get the most traction are two very dastardly subjects of today's video: Griffith from Berserk and the Principality of Zeon from Mobile Suit Gundam. Here's the question though: which one of these is the worst one? Now, obviously, I know a lot about Mobile Suit Gundam. I mean, over the last year, my best videos have been my 1 Year War series, and clearly have done quite well with views. I'm also very familiar with the ins and outs of how lethal Zeon was, but I need to bring someone into this video who's very familiar with the exploits of Griffith from Berserk. Now, Berserk is one of my favorite manga ever, second only to Devilman, but I do have a buddy of mine who knows it a bit more intimately than I do. Hey, Lolly, that's your cue, dude.
Shit. Sorry. Yeah. Where were we at? Okay. Yeah, you could say I know a little bit about Berserk. All right. Yeah, maybe more than a little. All right. So Micah and I are gonna break down the body count and shit that Zeon and Griffith did to become as hated as they are. But we're also gonna talk about stuff that kind of makes some people actually question whether or not these guys kind of have a point. Well, I don't think they have a point. Do you?
Nah, I hope Griffith gets his comeuppance worse than the Zabi family did, to be honest. To hell with that guy.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, we're going to break it down in numbers and talk about the crimes these guys committed and give you an idea of the scope of things. Then we'll talk about who's worse. Well, I guess let's just get started. Hey, before we get started, can I have Shota back after this?
Oh, yeah, he's just in the other room asleep.
Cool, cool. You didn't have to, take him to make me do the vid. Could just ask. How'd you even catch him?
Oh, I put Nembutal in his gamer sups. Dude pounded a whole waifu cup full of the drink mix and was out like a light. I'll untie him after the video.
No, I mean, you can keep him if you want. Just, make sure you don't feed him after midnight, get him wet, make sure he's able to do multis on Fate, get him a Gogeta statue every now and then. Oh yeah, speaking of gamer subs, don't forget to use code TAL at checkout and get you a discount. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah, there's even a caffeine-free option for old people like me. Another thing to remember is also to back cyberpop control theory on Indiegogo. Lolly's the writer, I'm the editor, we got a great artist in Manito Doria, plus this badass cover from Kanan White, the artist behind comics like Uber and Son of Shaolin.
Yeah, we got some good stuff going on. Now I guess we're done chilling. Let's talk about evil dictators. Griffith! Alright, to discuss Griffith's crimes, you kind of have to break it down to both the personal and the impersonal. Griffith as a villain tends to rub people way harder than someone like Zeon due to the fact that his crimes are so much more personal than what Zeon does. Yeah, Zeon's like a genocidal madman and he does a bunch of fucked up shit, but at the same time, it's in large scope ideas. He's killing scores of people instead of very small numbers. And you have that famous Stalin quote, "One death is a tragedy, a million is a statistic." Well, Griffith tends to rub the salt in the wound with the fact that the people he does all these horrible things to were people that were legitimately his friends. That was the entire point of Golden Age. The entire point of Golden Age is building up the relationship between him, Guts, and Casca, and also the bond the Band of the Hawk had. So when you get to the Eclipse where he sacrifices everybody, it is just a massive middle finger to everyone involved. Only taking things even further when he decides to rape Casca right in front of Guts, as one of the ultimate fuck yous that character could have ever received, which is only exacerbated further when you learn the existence of the Demon Infant. Griffith went so far as to not only rape the love of Guts' life, someone who also worshipped him as well, but also corrupted their unborn child into being a demon. Yeah, it's just one thing after another with the amount of fucked up shit he does with these people. And if you want to get to the impersonal with his macro-sized crimes, you also have the issues of him manipulating the rest of the world, painting himself as basically an antichrist figure, and then bringing upon the merging of the realms, something that brought the fantasy creatures into reality, which have then since torn the world to pieces and basically focused everybody into either Falconia, Elfhelm, or, as we see now, the Kushan Empire. And right now, Elfhelm is non-existent, and the Kushan Empire is about to be the same. So yeah, as you can see, the crimes of Griffith range from the very small stuff to the very big stuff. Even the preparation for the large-scale crimes also were in itself a large-scale crime, due to the fact that he and the rest of the Kanahan created Ganeshka, a completely psychotic emperor that led his people into a full-scale war of conquest of Midland, which they also ended up doing some pretty horrible things to people, such as mass executions, much more rape, and experimentations with dark magic that created these messed up demon-human hybrids known as the Daka. One thing after another, Griffith is seemingly tied to all these horrible events in Midland. Even before the invasion of the Kushans, you also had the plague, which was implied to be the result of the God Hand, famine, once again implied to be their fault, and just all around, people were miserable. It was a war-torn nation. It was not fun to live there. Hell, his first appearance in Guardians of Desire was him and the rest of the God Hand trying to manipulate the slug count, an already psychotic murderer, into sacrificing his own daughter, dragging her into hell forever so he could resurrect himself as a further enhanced demon. Something that actually has some story implications I might have to cover in my own videos. Yeah, now I think about that. Still, the point is, Griffith at every single step is doing these increasingly depraved and messed up things. Also, he can live out his LARP of being a king. All of reality is now a story he himself is writing and making himself the protagonist of. All he wanted was his kingdom, and he is getting it. And when you break that down, all of his crimes just seem so more messed up and childish. All these people are dying in horrific ways. Also, he could live out his dream of being a king, of being the savior to these people he put into harm's way in the first place. And at the same time, he is still actively tormenting Guts. Yeah, sure, for a while he kind of left him alone, but it became clear later on, it's now almost a personal vendetta. He didn't have to kidnap Casca, he didn't have to drag her back to Falconia or continue to pursue him at every single step, but he's doing it anyway. All because either A, he had the Moonlight Child influence, which is messing with his head, or B, he still feels that pang of connection between him and he wants to punish him for that. All in all, it's just one of those relationships where all you can see is Griffith is kind of a petty asshole. He just can't seem to let it go and needs to rub his victory in Guts' face. Now, this all could be an instrument of causality and fate, where they're just always destined to run into each other until one of them is dead, but I don't know. Some of it absolutely is Griffith's bias. He just can't seem to ignore Guts, and Guts also can't seem to ignore him fully. They're just destined to kill each other. And really, his crimes extend even into Golden Age itself when he was the supposed good guy. I mean, remember, the assassination mission that he sent Guts on, it's pretty heavily implied that Griffith was well aware of the possibility Guts could kill Julius' son, and probably planned on that. Not that Guts intended to kill him, it was a complete accident, but that son would have always been a target in Griffith's eyes, because he was a connection to the royal family. A connection Griffith wanted. He wanted to be the only guy capable of marrying Charlotte, ensuring his possibility of being a king. So even if Guts didn't stab the boy, Griffith was probably gonna have someone kill him anyway. Hell, the scene where it shows the news, where Charlotte's horrified at the fact her uncle and her young cousin were dead, Griffith is smiling. He's not even trying to hide the fact that he is gleeful at the news, because now one of his main adversaries is dead, and one of the competitors for Charlotte is also dead. One of the competitors to the throne once the king was gone is now not a factor, meaning that all that's left is Charlotte and whoever she marries. That being Griffith. Griffith, even as a human, was a very cold and heartless man when he wanted to be. He was capable of doing some downright nefarious shit to people. Of course, he had to do that to survive. But when you take the later context of the eclipse and onwards into account, no. Griffith always had a natural affinity, I guess you could say, to being evil. He was fully capable of being the devil himself. Granted, it's not like Guts is a saint either, but Guts was always honest about who he was. He was a loud, brash barbarian who liked to fight. Griffith had multiple faces. It's hard to say who the real guy even is. You don't even know if he was playing a character when he was talking with Guts or not. Sure, he showed moments where he did genuinely like Guts and liked their connection, but you don't know if that was actual affinity, friendship, or just a possessive desire to control something that is very useful. Guts was one of his top soldiers, a warrior of legendary status. And losing Guts when he decided to leave the Band of the Hawk and go on his own journey caused Griffith to go into a mental spiral, which ended up leading to him being tortured, and we all know what happened from there. So really, Griffith is a matter of you don't even know if he truly liked anyone to begin with. Was he always just a cold and brutal monster that knew how to manipulate people? Or was there a man underneath all of that that just turned to evil? That's the interesting thing about Griffith, and that's what makes him so hateable. The idea that he could have been good if he wanted to be, and he just decided he didn't want to be. Sure, the world of Berserk is brutal. It is very unkind to people, especially if they're just innocent bystanders. However, that does not mean it's not possible for you to do the right thing. There are tons of characters that do the right thing and proudly do so. You have Roderick, who is just a good guy. You have Luca, who is just a good person. You have people that are willing to change and redeem themselves and actually fight for the side of good. So knowing that that's there, and that there is the possibility of doing the right thing and it won't immediately kill you, makes what Griffith does all the more painful. He just doesn't care. He just doesn't want to be human. He wants to be evil. He wants to be a demon. And having that factor of choice in there, well, personally, I think that says it. When you knowingly do the wrong thing, knowing it's the wrong thing to do, and you have every chance in the world to not do that, well, you're kind of a dick.
Aina, I hate the Zeon.
Oh man, this is going to be fun. For anyone who has watched my 1 Year War series, I've made it a habit to go over in detail exactly how many people Zeon was responsible for killing. These guys might be one of the most genocidal factions in all of anime, might even be the most genocidal faction in all of anime, and they are easily one of the most genocidal in all of science fiction. Now, for those of you not familiar with Mobile Suit Gundam, you'd probably think that they've killed millions of people. Nah, bigger. Zeon as a faction is responsible for billions of deaths. Their kill count is so high that Abaddon the Despoiler would look at that and go, rock on, buddy. Mind if I borrow the colony drop strategy so I can break Cadia real quick? Okay, that might be a little bit of an exaggeration with the whole Abaddon thing, but the kill count isn't. So what we're going to do is break down the kill count by these sons of bitches, dictator by dictator. We got 3 we're going to go over. First is Giran Zabi, and by extension his followers. Second, Haman Karn, and finally Shar Azdabal. So of the 3 tyrants we're talking about with Zeon, Giran Zabi is the worst of the 3. When his father compares him to Adolf Hitler, Giran takes it as a fucking compliment. Then his dad's like, yeah, but Hitler fucking died, lol. But the thing is, it's an apt comparison, and Gundam creator Yoshiyuki Tamino clearly meant for it to be that kind of comparison. So let's keep this in mind. The creator of Mobile Suit Gundam made it a point to state that the leader of Zeon's forces during the 1 Year War, Giran Zabi, is not only comparable to Hitler, but the character calls himself a student of Hitler, one of the unholy trinity of mass murderers, right next to Stalin and Mao. Let's get back to the beginning with this genocidal asshole. So, when Shar Azdabal's dad, Zeon Sumdaikun, was poisoned by Giran's dad, Giran immediately did his own version of the Night of Long Knives by performing extrajudicial executions of people who were loyalists to Shar's father. This is why Rambaral's father, who was also Shar Aznabal's father's best friend, Jimbaral, stole both Shar and Sayla away so that they could, get to actually live. A few years later, the 1 Year War started. Zeon declared war on the Earth, and always said that they were fighting for Spacenoid independence. We're putting that in big air quotes here. So, what does Giran order his men to do? Attack other Spacenoids! Yeah, first thing this guy does is start killing people he claims as his own. Zeon forces absolutely wrecked several colonies, gleefully inflicting massive civilian casualties under the guise of just trying to take out Federation military facilities. And then came Operation British. This is where Zeon quite literally gassed an entire colony full of people. And on top of that, lied to the soldier who fired the bomb, saying it was sleeping gas, effectively making Seema Garahau into a mass murderer when she sure as shit didn't want to be. And on top of that, they tried to drop that colony on Jaburo, which is where Earth Federation HQ was at the time. So even before attacking the Earth, Giran had ordered the deaths of millions of people that he claimed as his own, and was lying to his own forces to cover up the body count. Now, Operation British was technically a failure, in the sense that the colony didn't land on Jaburo, but rather on Sydney, Australia, which of course is a massive city. Even so, it caused a 500-kilometer hole, which is over 300 miles, and created typhoon-level storms in multiple places on Earth, killing even more people. Had it landed on Jaburo, it obviously wouldn't have taken out a major city, maybe, but it could have, because it's still landing in the Americas. It still is going to genocide a ton of people, because the Amazon River Basin, which is where Jaburo is located, somewhere along there, is within spitting distance of several major South American cities. On top of the effects on the weather and the ecosystem, and how many people that the ensuing typhoons and other storms would have killed. By the way, this is before Mobile Suit Gundam as a television show even starts. By the time the first episode of the original show comes around, half of humanity's population's dead. Now, here's something to keep in mind. Both in Japanese and English, it says, humanity has lost half of its population. Not Zeon and Earth as two separate entities. And there's a lot fewer people inside 3, where Zeon is located, than everywhere else. And the population of humanity was around 10 billion people at the start of Gundam. So let's do this math. There's 150 million people inside 3's colonies, which means close to 5 billion people died because of Zeon's actions in the 1-year war. People who actually think this faction had a point can kiss my ass. They killed billions, and still lost. Why? Because Gundam. Thank you, Amuro. That's why. Well, that and Giran Zabi was a terrible military leader. He was basically just a giant bully who had no idea how to balance a fucking checkbook. The instant he didn't have a technological advantage over his enemy, Zeon constantly got beat up, with some of their best pilots getting curb-checked by a teenage engineering nerd, who was also a new type, but still, it's a nerd. How the fuck? Anyway, then we come to Operation Stardust in 0083, where another colony gets dropped on Earth. Where did they aim it? The Midwest. Why? To basically make it that much harder for people on Earth to grow food! Yeah, classy. Eat a dick, Ana Belgato. After that, we fast forward to the first Neo-Zeon War in 0088, and to Haman Karn. Now, some of you might already know why I like Haman Karn. Okay, it's more than her fat ass, but it certainly helps. Thing is, Haman Karn is very much a war criminal. She's also very guilty of dropping a colony, this time on the city of Dublin. Now, if it wasn't for the efforts of Judo Ashita, the best Universal Century character ever, and his friends, plus the brave sacrifices of Hayato Kobayashi and Elpeo Puru, the body count would have been much worse than it was. Even so, a lot of people died from the impact. Dublin's population nowadays is around 500,000, and it was probably less in the Gundam universe, but it is safe to say that thousands of people easily died that day. And any colony drop is going to affect how the Earth rotates and its weather patterns. Every time you drop a colony, you basically screw up the Earth in a permanent fashion. After that, we have Shar Aznable, who 100% was trying to destroy the entire fucking planet. He successfully dropped Luna 2 on Federation headquarters, which at that time had been moved to Tibet after the first Neo-Zeon War. And he wanted to drop Axis on the Earth as well. Now, what Axis is it's a big-ass asteroid that got converted into a base by Zeon around 0072. So about 16, 17 years prior. Oddly enough, Shar used to live there at one point. An asteroid like that hitting the Earth means no more Earth. Now, thankfully, Amuro Ray got into the new Gundam, and Shar got these hands. Quite literally, watch this. Now, that's basically the worst crimes that Zeon would do, but the funny thing to me is that we've got a military faction responsible for the deaths of billions, and everyone seems to think that, like, Light Yagami or Alucard from Hellsing have the biggest kill counts in anime. Bitch, please. The fact of the matter is that I honestly believe that when it comes to today's topic of who is worse when it comes to Zeon or Griffith, much as I hate Griffith, Zeon certainly takes the cake for who has the higher body count and the bigger effect on humanity. But who is actually worse? Well, Loli and I are going to get together for a bit and see who really is the creme de la creme of being a pile of shit.
It's official. You suck.
After taking a little bit of time from both of us to talk about some of the worst motherfuckers that have, come out of Japanese fiction, Jesus Christ, these people kill a lot of human beings.
Yeah, I'm noticing a theme there. Not a lot of preservation of human life.
Yeah, this is an interesting question. When, like, the whole theme of this video was brought up to somebody, or from somebody in one of my live streams. Just asked the question, who's worse, Griffith or Zeon? I couldn't really answer. Because there's so many factors.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about, and especially with how those stories are and the scale they operate off of, it is legitimately a question that can get kind of complicated.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to like what's um how you consider like worse. And because I almost feel like there's a difference between who could be considered objectively worse in regards to body count and who you personally hate more.
Yeah, it's a very big factor with villains. A very common trope that you may see come up time and time again. I know naming trope is kind of one of those like really Reddit things, but you know, tropes are story devices. They're literal story devices. But you have the moral event horizon where a character does something so despicable that they are just completely irredeemable in the eyes of the story and the audience. And funny enough, both characters basically end up doing that.
Oh yeah, because like with Xeon, the one thing that's kind of interesting is like I don't know how many years Berserk takes to get from. It's like 4 or 5 years, right? From like the end of the Golden Age arc to about where we are now.
Yeah, roughly. They kind of get they get a little loosey goosey with time after the Tower of Conviction. When they stop having those like very distinct time cuts of like 2 years later and stuff like that. So you kind of just have to operate off the logic of all right, how long would it take to walk from one end of a medieval country to the other?
Yeah. See, with Xeon as a faction, looking at them, you know, their history goes from the original Gundam all the way up to Gundam Unicorn and a little bit past that, which is like a time period of close to 20 years. And
About, yeah.
but it's all their genocides are basically all front loaded with the 1 year war, and
Yeah.
it's wild when you think of the body count because over the course of about like 5, 6, whatever years, Griffith, what he does is ridiculous because he's like him and the God Hand have been manipulating events, but with Zeon, they killed close to 5 billion people in 6 months.
Yeah, yeah. You once again, because Gundam has such a massive scale, they have a lot more kind of factors to play with where it's not just countries, it's entire colonies of people, like people living on planets. So they decided to start going around nuking planets. That's death counts that at the very least have to be in the high hundreds of millions, if not billions.
Yeah, like it's just one of those things where, not to mention like Griffith. I think Griffith's idea is a little bit different because my whole thought has been that you know because he wants a kingdom to rule. You know, he's not one of those. He's not like Quan Chi from Mortal Kombat where he just wants to rule over the corpses.
Yeah.
See, he wants to be he wants the king experience basically.
Yeah, he's basically a little kid playing out a game of knights. You know, he wants to be the king. You know, and that's why you get that scene in the Golden Age, right before the eclipse, because I think it's him in the tower. But he's hallucinating, playing with his friends, and he's with his friends, and he looks up at the castle and says, "I want to go there one day," or something to that effect. So Griffith, even as a grown man, is still kind of trying to live out this childish fantasy of "I'll rise up and be a king," which obviously affects a lot of his thought process. And you even kind of see it after the realms merge, where it's not just, "Oh, now I'm in control of everything forever and I'm invincible," even though he also has that going for him. It's all these fantasy creatures are running around. He basically made a fantasy world. He turned the entire world into like Tolkien.
Pretty much. Whereas with Gundam, you know, the whole thing with the way that it plays out, Tomino wanted at least every indication that I've taken wanted to parallel a lot of what Zeon was doing to Germany in World War II. And there's even a point where in the original Gundam where Giren's father actually compares him to Hitler. And
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't they just directly call the Zeon fascist in a few points? Like they're meant to be allegories for the Nazis.
yeah, exactly. So like they even have in the lore their own parallel to the Knight of Long Knives. And they also like they didn't start up like concentration camps from what I remember, but they were pretty merciless when it came to killing civilians. Like they didn't give a fuck.
Yeah, I mean, the horror was the point of it. It's like we are the might of Zeon, you know, that whole thing.
Exactly. So that's kind of like where like so I guess when it comes to body count, it's really hard. I don't in anime to top the absolute the amount of people that Zeon killed. Because Zeon, the side 3 colony cluster, which that is what Zeon is comprised of like maybe 3 or 4 colonies about it's a few million people, I think. It's like 5 million, 6 million, something like that. Which,
they're weirdly small for what they're able to do.
yeah. Um, Whereas they are, like, humanity at the time of Gundam is 10 billion people. And the very first episode of Mobile Suit Gundam tells you that half the human population's dead.
Yeah,
like, overall.
purely dead by war. It wasn't by like aliens or anything like that. Like people killed each other.
Yeah. The big one, of course, being the colony drop and all that shit. But so it's hard to touch that. I think is there. Now, I'm obviously not as well versed on anime as you are, but can you think of any other faction that has killed that many people?
Well, that's where you get into a lot of like the kind of space age mecha stories, you know, because there's a lot of Gundam offshoots, not just Gundam spinoffs, but you know, people that were trying to replicate Gundam, do their own version of Gundam, that whole thing. I think some of the spinoffs to God, what was the fucking name of it? I'm blanking on the name. The one where like the idols where they like sing and you have the mecha fights.
Macross.
God. Macross, yeah. I think some spin-offs of Macross also kind of try to lean into a little bit of like space post-apocalypse where humanity kind of ripped each other apart. You have Vodums where humanity's in a very bad place and they're just getting off a war that was like 100 years old and it's about to kick back up again. So it's one of those of like when you get into like that high-scale mecha, everyone's kind of trying to outdo each other with body count. But with like Gundam in particular, there's always such a heavy feeling to that body count. Especially when you get into something like IBO, where it doesn't just kill a bunch of people. Each death hurts, where like half the cast is dead by the end, and you feel everyone. And it's like, oh god.
Yeah, it's a. I think that's sort of like the big difference between Griffith and Zeon, because with it, like, it annoys me being a Gundam fan whenever people do the whole Zeon did nothing wrong, because that sort of edgy shit. It annoys me because there are people that actually do believe that Zeon did nothing wrong because they were fighting for independence, quote unquote. Which I think about that and I'm like, why the fuck do you need to drop a colony on a planet for independence exactly?
Yeah, it's like, no. I mean, the shitposts are funny, but it is one of those where it's like, no, they're the bad guys. They're the bad guys of the story. Once again, I know some spinoffs try to flesh out Zeon a little bit more. They're not always the bad guys in certain timelines or certain stories. But original Gundam in particular, they are directly meant to be like, they're like stormtroopers. They are just faceless totalitarianism that just wants to oppress everybody else. And them killing so many people is kind of meant to be that like blunt stick going against your head over and over again. These are the bad guys. These are the bad guys. They don't care about human life. Which obviously for someone like Tamino, who is very anti-war, yeah, that's a big sign that they're the bad guy.
Yeah. Whereas with Griffith, it's interesting because we were talking about before we started the recording. Griffith killed a lot less people than Zeon ever did, but
yeah,
you kind of want to take your hand and like rip his eyes out because of the shit that he did.
Yeah. It's the fact that not only were all the deaths like horrifying because people who die in Berserk never die well, but it's also the fact that each person that died is either just a completely innocent bystander at the wrong place at the wrong time, or they were somebody that Guts knew and had a very close bond with, so that hurts him more as well. So you kind of have both sides of it, of not only do countless innocents die, but you also have people that personally were close to Guts dying left and right. I mean, obviously you have the Eclipse, and the extra steps that Griffith took on top of that, where it's not just he's killing people that Guts knew, it's also the fact that he is tormenting them. If you die, you're going to hell. You are going to be pulled into the void, and you'll be part of that, spiral forever. He rapes Casca, drives her completely insane, corrupts their kid. It's this thing where it's just one endless fuck you after another.
Yeah, and on top of that, I mean, we've taken the journey with Guts. He, in my opinion, is a really good example of the whole Joseph Campbell thing of the hero with 1,000 faces, right? Obviously a darker twist because of like his origins and stuff like that, but he really is the hero that goes out, into the world to to conquer the bad guy and so on and so forth. It's just his journey is a lot darker. And the thing about that Campbell format that so many great storytellers have taken on is that people love it so much because you feel like you're there with the character, and we feel like we've been there with Guts this whole time, and we've gotten attached to Pippin and Judo, and I guess somebody likes Corcus somewhere. I don't know. I don't know that person, but you're just kind of like, you see all these deaths. Gaston's the character that was voiced by Sean Schemmel, right?
Yeah, because they make jokes that he's Goku in the outtakes.
Yeah, that's right. I always forget his name, but yeah, and Gaston dies like one of the worst ones because his head just explodes.
Yeah,
but like that I think is like the key difference between the two of them is everything that Griffith does feels so fucking personal.
Yeah.
Whereas with Zeon does not feel that personal at the start, because when you start getting into the lore, because like, you know, you and I both have done lore videos for these respective franchises. You know, we know quite a bit about them, you know, from our own takes on it. With Zeon, a lot of the lore that I got into with my 1 Year War series, I was like pulling from stuff that was never animated. This is all supplementary materials that go over exactly what happened and like the effects of all these things. In the actual anime, when you get the very first episode, it's just something that the narrator says in the opening, is that half of humanity's dead.
Yeah.
So it's very impersonal. You do see like terrible things happen within Gundam. Like the very first episode is brutal because like one of the Zaku's opens fire on the Federation base that's there in the colony, and dude is just laying down gunfire and blows up a bunch of civilians. Frau Bo like literally basically sees her parents get liquefied because by a giant fucking bullet. You know, it's intense. But it's like the characters that we follow, we don't really see that sort of brutality that like we saw with the Eclipse. Even other Gundam franchises that are within the Universal Century, the worst one that you see is in Gundam Double Zeta when Haman Karn drops a colony onto Dublin.
Yeah.
That one is like that one's kind of rough, and that one it gets personal because characters that in that moment that you see they die, and you're like, motherfucker, really? But I think that's sort of the big thing, and like why me personally, like the people who legitimately believe Griffith did nothing wrong, I if I had hair to pull out, I would be pulling it out of my head.
Yeah. Well, obviously, Gundam, because obviously, once again, Tomino is very anti-war. He wanted to look at it at a perspective of humanity at this point is just desensitized to it, and it takes losing people next to you for you to understand, like, oh shit, these are the stakes. You are not safe. This will consume everyone and all life unless we stop it. You know, that whole thing. Griffith in Berserk, it's always meant to be about that personal bond. It's not just war, because Berserk kind of treats war as kind of an inevitability, where it's like, you know, a big theme in Berserk is debating morality of like, is humanity by its very nature evil or good? So things like war and rape and genocide are treated as very just matter-of-fact things of this is what people do to each other. So it took kind of a similar road in that you like seeing Guts like tear his way through a legion of soldiers, and it's like, oh, hell yeah. I mean, the 100-man fight is like one of the most hype parts of it, and you love to see Guts win. But when the eclipse happens and the tables kind of turn on them and they're just getting slaughtered left and right by these beings that are laughing and giggling as they kill them, it is horrifying. And you kind of get hit with that, oh shit moment of, yeah, now the tables turn, you are no longer top of the food chain, and that whole deal. And the apostles themselves, you know, the demons, they embody human evil. You know, that's something that the God Hand makes clear when someone makes the deal and becomes a demon. Your heart will rip open, and in its place will be evil. So it's this thing where Griffith in particular is the embodiment of all that is evil. And someone like Zeon, it's meant to be a lot more sociopathic, where they don't really think about it, where it's just a matter-of-fact operation, like, hey, we're doing this to get something done, you're just in our way. Griffith plans on people dying. He plans on it. I mean, the whole Falcon of Light prophecy is the God Hand pushing Midland to the brink of apocalypse to then have Griffith swoop in as the hero to save it all. He completely manipulates the nation into thinking he is basically Jesus Christ made flesh for a situation he caused in the first place. You know, that's where you have that kind of childish pettiness to it, where he gets to gallivant around as king, even though he's not actually a king. He's just a manipulative demon.
Yeah. It's just one of those weird things, man, where, again, going back to the initial question, if I had to pick one that's worse, I don't really know if there's... It's basically pick your poison.
Yeah.
Like, do you like... Do you want to get nuked into oblivion or killed by a typhoon that is the offshoot of a colony dropped on Australia, or possibly stepped on by a giant robot? Or do you want to be raped and eaten by trolls? Or, I guess in the case if you're a woman, you're going to be used as a breeding factory for them. Or for demons in Ganishka's army, or, you know, just whatever the fuck.
Any manner of fate worse than death.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's one of those of Berserk obviously has that horror bent to it, so it's meant to be horrifying and fucked up. Meanwhile, Gundam is a lot more clinical. The horror is about the horrors of war. It's about tearing down civilization, pushing people into positions they never need to be in. You know, family starving, children orphaned. You know, that's the horror. That's the messed up part about it. Berserk's a lot more physical horror. So it's this thing of, I guess if you want to view it as the manner of Berserk at least can rely on the idea of evil to explain everything away, where it's like, hey, everyone's being manipulated by Satan. So it's obviously the world's going to be a lot more messed up than what it could be if people just didn't believe in that. You know, if people weren't guided by this malevolent creature in the depths of the astral realm that's basically been playing history for thousands of years. Meanwhile, Gundam, people can make their choices. They can choose not to kill civilians. They can choose not to go to war. So there's no one to really blame it on beyond they're part of a system they don't want to change, even as all of humanity is slowly petering out.
Yeah, it's not like in Berserk, there's not really like somebody within Griffith's army, his Neo Band of the Hawk, that is like a parallel to someone like Ramba Ral, where Ramba Ral was a good guy in a bad military. There's no good guys in the Neo Band of the Hawk.
Yeah, it's physically impossible for apostles to deny the orders of Griffith. They are instinctively going to follow him because that's their nature. They're evil. So they will follow the ultimate evil. Now, obviously, the humans, you can make arguments for, but the humans, they're not doing anything wrong. They're just fighting the enemy. They went to war with the Kushans, who were trying to genocide them. So the humans, they don't think they're the bad guy at all. And everything we've seen of them, they're not the bad guy. They're just following this guy that's saving their world. They're unaware of everything Griffith's doing.
And it's hard to say how they're going to respond to finding out that they've been manipulated this whole fucking time. Well, we'll have to see what, you know, Mori and the rest of the team that's working on Berserk right now, what they do with it, which we're starting to get chapters more often, which is awesome.
Yeah. Supposedly supposedly the new one is finished and they're editing it now, so could be in the next few months.
God, I would absolutely love to get more than like 2 chapters a year. That would be amazing.
Yeah, that would be nice.
So yeah. So I think that, just the conclusion is fuck both of them. It's just fuck Zeon, fuck Griffith.
Who do you like more? Do you like Nazis or the devil? Because that's basically your choice here.
Pretty much. Like, it's... I will say, though, and this is one thing that is kind of interesting, because we're talking about one franchise that's like 50 years old at this point, another one that's... Berserk started in, what, 80 something?
89.
89. So, God, I was 4 years old when Berserk started. That's wild. Like, we've got franchises been around for decades. One thing that I have to say is these are 2 of my favorites of all time. I love Berserk. It's not my favorite manga. My favorite's Devilman, but Berserk is very close behind it. And then, of course, Gundam is like my favorite anime franchise. So,
Berserk is basically just the off-child of Devilman.
Yeah, pretty much. The one thing that I always tell people is, like, you really can't beat old school stories like Gundam, like Berserk, because in a lot of ways they're the last bastions of having truly deplorable villains.
Yeah. I mean, people make jokes all the time of like, oh, they're gonna pull a Guts for Goods Griffith at the end thing, but no, none of the recent chapters point to that at all. Like they're doubling down on it. And more than that, it's just the morality of the era they came from. I mean, Gundam was the 70s, so that was when manga was starting to dip into kind of more mature storytelling. They want to explore the idea of like, what if you ran into this faction that is just irredeemable and they will just do the worst things possible to you? Berserk was inspired by very old school pulp fantasy. I mean, I say that, and you also had stuff like Devilman, Fist of the North Star, and all that. But Conan the Barbarian, a little bit of Solomon Kane, this and that. You can definitely feel Robert E. Howard is mixed in there somewhere.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And it's this thing where their manner of looking at things and their manner of judging things comes down to basically what their inspirations are. Tomino wanted to tell a war story, a very large scale thing. It's almost kind of like All Quiet on the Western Front, where it's not really about the protagonist per se. It's about the protagonist as he journeys with this group as they're fighting this war. Berserk, as stated, very much a protagonist-driven story. It is Guts' journey. It is him. So everything is painted by his perspective, his view on things, and his morality. Berserk actually treats Guts killing very, very matter-of-factly. Like, he is a warrior. That's what he does. He fights. He's like Conan. He just kills because that is what you do in this setting. You kill. Gundam makes the act of killing a very heavy thing for people because not everybody can be a soldier. They're scared people. There's civilians. There's kids who join up thinking they're going to be a badass. Then they run into their first battle and they piss themselves. That whole thing.
yeah. There's literally, in the final battles of Gundam, at the Battle of Abawaku, there are literally because both Zeon and the Federation near the end of the war both fielded child soldiers, and there are children in high end mobile suits crying for mommy because they're afraid to die.
Yeah.
It gets very brutal you wouldn't think that a series that came out in 1979 would be as brutal as it is, but Gundam is, So, but yeah, the one thing that I just tell people all the time, man, is if you're gonna if you think that some of the stuff that you see nowadays is good, you really ought to go read the old school stuff because it's way better. Gundam and Berserk are they're two of my biggest recommendations to people because you're gonna get the only villain that I think has come out that is the caliber of some of the villains in these franchises in the world of manga lately was Makima. So,
yeah, I can see it.
but that's just my thoughts on it. But I think that kind of brings us to the end of our little discussion here. So before we take off, the last thing to note for those of you, we owe everybody out there a big thank you for Cyberpop doing as well as it has in regards to the amount of money that it's brought in. We closed out at over $30,000.
That ain't bad. That ain't
Not
bad
at all. Yeah. So for those of you out there who would like to get it, obviously Lolly here is the creator. I'm the editor on the book, and the book is coming along great. If you haven't picked up a copy yet, you've still got the chance because the book is in demand over on Indiegogo, and yeah, everything else, if you haven't subscribed to either of our channels at this point, you should do so. We try to make sure that everybody's having fun with the videos that we do. Anything else I'm missing?
At the moment, I think we got everything. I guess we can clarify real quick. Yeah, the comic is in demand, meaning that all the big perks are gone, but you're still able to get copies if you're interested. And just so you know, this is not just going to be a one and done thing. There's a lot more planned under the hood here. I may have some more drafts at the ready and cool stuff to show off to people.
Yep. So we plan on doing this for a good long while, folks.
Oh yeah.
So with that said, I really have nothing else to say. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and we will see you guys next time.
Yep.